Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the thing. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, so if you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it, but if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome, and we would love it if you subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. Especially according to our Libsyn statistics, the giant influx of people from France that we had recently with our episodes on WandaVision and Robin Hood, which I chalk up to just really capturing on the SEO, but also I think there's something weird and fishy and funky going on there where maybe we got hit with a whole bunch of bots. But yeah,
Bonjour.
I tweeted this out, something to the effect of those two episodes in particular shot up over 6,000% compared to our normal episodes. And with Emperor's New Groove last week, we were back down to normal, really, really low numbers. So I was like, okay, yeah, must have been a weird little glimpse of something going on there. But if we did actually bring in a lot of new French supporters, bonjour to you. And thank you for giving us a shot. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Bonjour. Je m'appelle Cameron.
There you go. And we are going to be talking all about Diary of a Future President this week. The first episode of that entitled Hello World in particular. Basically, because it was President's Day here in the United States, and I was like, let me find something on theme with this. Originally kind of the idea being, hey, if I need to do a quick solo episode on this, I can sit down and do that. Cameron was able to join us, but our half of our team is out there in Austin and has been drastically affected by all of the weather and the power outages this last week. So of course our thoughts and hearts go out to them and everybody else affected. But it's been kind of a weird week here at That Nerdy Site, trying to just kind of hold down the fort. I did That News You Care About as a solo show this week. I did That Nerdy Site show as a solo show this week. So I was fully prepared to come in and do this one as a solo show as well. But Cameron was able to check out the episode, and so we are here to talk about it today. Would have been Logan weirdly loves President's Day so very much. It is his favorite holiday, no joke. He is just a weirdo like that. So it would have been nice to have him on, but of course, he was unavailable because of everything going on. So, yeah. A little bit of the history lesson on this. This show originally released January 17th, 2020. Basically, season 1 ran from January 17th through March 20th of last year. So basically, the before times right up to the end of the before times. Other releases of the time of kind of early last year, you had Cheer, which is a show I've heard about on Netflix, came out January 5th. Avenue 5 came out to HBO Max January 19th, and I've watched that show, and I did not like that show.
Avenue 5?
Yeah, Avenue 5. It's Hugh Laurie, Josh Gad. Trying to think if there's anybody else I recognize from it. The guy who plays David Wallace from The Office, I think, is in there.
Idris Elba?
No.
Oh, no. That guy. Gotcha.
Yeah.
The other.
The guy Idris Elba comes in and replaces. But yeah, it's them set on a space liner that is just completely incompetently run and all that stuff. It was not a good show.
You really did not like it.
I really did not like it.
Really hated
it's
it.
by the guy behind Veep and Armand Iannucci or something like that. Yeah.
That should have been a hit. That should have been a smash hit.
I mean, to the people that like that kind of humor, I'm sure it was. It does not rub me the right way. So yeah, I sat down and watched it because I was basically trying to justify my HBO Max subscription at the time, I guess, or HBO Go or whatever it was at the time. But yeah, also around this time we had Star Trek Picard launched on January 23rd on CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus, I guess. And that's a show that I remember like coming and then hearing nothing about once it was out. So, I hope it did well. And then last one I pulled in here, Mythic Quest Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet came to Apple TV Plus February 7th. The Ubisoft partially funded / like they think they recorded in like Ubisoft Studios or whatever. It's definitely some kind of joint thing with Ubisoft. Fuck, all the abuse stuff going on with Ubisoft, but we do have friends over there, so thought that was a fun one to pull in as well. Runtime of the show is approximately 30 minutes per episode. In the Disney Plus original series scripted timeline of things, I did not pull in unscripted stuff because there's like a ton of that. This falls in between the kind of launch lineup of High School Musical, the musical, the series, and The Mandalorian, which had come out in November of 2019. And then The Right Stuff came out October of 2020. So kind of right there smack dab in the middle. Obviously, scripted stuff is ramping up this year with all the Marvel stuff coming out, like WandaVision and stuff. But it made me realize how light Disney Plus was on like scripted original stuff last year. Roll call: who's who of the film, in particular this episode. Gina Rodriguez, who also kind of stars as the future president version of Elena Cañero-Reed, is in here as the director. She came in and directed this first episode. She's also a producer on the show. And she, of course, kind of made a claim to fame as the titular Jane in Jane the Virgin on the CW. She was also Velma in 2020's Scoob, which Jazz Foster was not a huge fan of, but as our resident Scooby-Doo aficionado, I wanted to give that a little shout out to her. And on the Carmen Sandiego show that's been running since 2019, she plays the role of Carmen. She also, in the director's chair, directed 3 episodes of Jane the Virgin and an episode of the 2018-2019 Charmed prior to this. So this is only her 5th episode of directing anything. Writers, the creator and showrunner, or I don't know if she's the showrunner, but the creator of the show and the writer of this episode is Alana Pena, who previously, before this, wrote on 18 episodes of the TV series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And then the starring, a lot of relative unknowns, particularly with all the kids and stuff, but Tess Romero playing young Elena she only has 4 credits prior to this, dating back to 2017. Probably the biggest name, apart from like the little guest starring that we get in this episode, is Selenis, I would guess Selenis Levia, playing Gabby Cañero-Reed, the mom. Was most notably to me and most recognizably to me Gloria Mendoza on Orange is the New Black on Netflix for many, many years. She's also Miss Warren in Spider-Man Homecoming, one of the teachers. And if you've enjoyed the new DuckTales series, she plays Officer Cabrera in a few episodes of that, which I believe is Gizmo Duck's mom, if I recall that correctly. And then Charlie Bushnell playing Bobby here, Cañero-Reed, another relative unknown who only had 2 credits prior to this, a couple of short films dating like one in 2018 and one in 2020. And then Michael Weaver playing Sam Faber there, most recognizable probably from Super Troopers. And then he was also in Broken Lizard's follow-up to that, Club Dread. Those are the only 2 things like I really recognized. He's had like a handful of other kind of character bits and stuff over the years, but nothing that really jumped out at me. So, and then of course, notable cameos in this episode, Aisha Tyler playing Alicia there. Most notably from Archer and Criminal Minds and Ubisoft conferences and Whose Line Is It Anyway? And again, Gina Rodriguez playing President Elena Cañero-Reed. Trivia, the only trivia listed on IMDb is Season 1 consists of 10 episodes. And then I jotted down a little note that 1 out of 4 people found that interesting. I thought that was hilarious. A couple little bits of trivia that I threw in here is this was originally titled Diary of a Female President when it was kind of announced by Disney that it was going to be part of Disney Plus's lineup, but eventually changed to Diary of a Future President. And then, like, actually watching the episode, it dawned on me, like, seeing President Gina Rodriguez on there, basically. I was like, she went from Jane the Virgin, i.e. a high school character, to president in a very relatively short time, TV-wise. So I looked it up. She was born in July 1984. So at the time of airing, she was 35 years old and would have been just barely eligible to be president, as Article 2 of the Constitution requires a minimum age of 35 for that position. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if she's supposed to be playing older or whatnot, or if she is just kind of like an on the cusp.
Jane the Virgin's not a teenager.
Oh, she was not?
Have you ever watched the show?
No, I thought the show started with her in high school.
No. She's a young like 19, 20, 21-year-old like age group.
Okay.
She's actually like engaged and going to get married. If you haven't watched Jane the Virgin, like I was like, oh, it's like one of these shows or whatever. My younger coworkers when I worked at ASU, like one of them was like, you have to watch it. Like you're going to love it. And so I watched it and I was like, wow, I really loved it. I watched the entire first season. It is a really, really good show, but like to put it in perspective, it is 100% an English-spoken telenovela.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I knew about it. And so yeah, I just remember like originally seeing like some of those early CW promos because that like was probably peak time I was watching stuff like Arrow, so I was actually like seeing CW stuff like advertised to me. And so yeah, I just thought. Like I knew obviously she would grow up over the course of the series, but I thought it started out she was like in high school and there was something weird. Okay, but still like 19 to 20, like whatever. Yeah. Like it ran for 6 years, something like that, 100 episodes. And so like still like even with that, she'd be pre-30 by the end of that series. So like interesting that I still thought it was an interesting thing. I appreciate that I was off in my timing, though. Thank you for correcting me.
No problem. It would just be it's a really weird show if you think that she's a teenager because, like, it's about her like pseudo love quadrangle, pentagon almost with so she goes in for like a like just gynecological checkup, and another woman is going to get inseminated by her husband's frozen stuff. And there's a switcheroo with the doctor. Want. But the thing is like it was his only stuff. And because of an accident, he can't have any more, he can't have kids. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a big deal. So they are trying really hard to convince her. Well, first off, she's got like the whole Catholic guilt, you can't get an abortion thing. Then they're trying to convince her hey, the kid, the stuff is his and whatnot. And then there's the fact that she actually is an employee at his hotel, and it's a whole lot of drama, and it's really, really funny. It's hilarious. But the amount of drama is ridiculous to the point where it's very funny. Yeah. So very good show. She is fantastic in it. I loved her in it. It reminds me very much in several ways of Ugly Betty, but not as comedically driven as Ugly Betty. Which is funny because
Yeah, there was definitely when I was kind of doing the research for it, I realized, and I probably didn't even put it together until you mentioned Ugly Betty, but I was definitely thinking of Ugly Betty as I was putting this together, and because I was like, I feel like Gina Rodriguez was in something before this. Before Jane the Virgin,
she was not. That was American Ferrera.
Exactly. That's what I'm realizing as we're talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, American Ferrera was Ugly Betty and had done a couple of things prior to Ugly Betty. But
also a big fan of American Ferrera. I am I am also a big fan of her. She's fantastic. Yeah. Back when she was in what is the Disney Channel original film? Si Si Puede.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
The cheerleader one. It's really good.
Yeah. But enough about that. Let's talk about this episode, Hello World, Diary of a Future President. What did you think? Obviously, it's our typical, does it hold up? Doesn't really,
Doesn't
for
fly
them.
here.
I mean, it is definitely interesting watching this now in a post-Trump world compared to it originally airing in a Trump world, where it definitely comes across as much more of like a resistance to that. But yeah, what did you think?
I think it starts itself off as being very resistant to, I think, modern politics in general. Not just Trump and like not just the Trump era and like the legacy that we've been left with because of his presidency, but a lot of the because it opens up where this is a very it is a wonderful positive thing that this young woman has become president of the United States. It's a big deal, not just because they're telling us it's a big deal, and they never tell us, oh, she is the first female president, she's the first Latin like there's none of that set up. People are just like, everybody really likes her, she's really popular, and she's really good.
Yeah,
and
the TV's like, oh, inauguration, broke records.
Which is crazy to think about in a post in a current
when we're not in
world.
a pandemic. Yeah.
No, when I think about it, I thought that it was a very solid show. It's just, I think the problem I think it's a good show. My problem is that I've seen too many Disney ABC family shows. This plays the greatest hits of those. You have douchey but lovable older brother, spunky and smart younger sibling. One parent is departed. It's not too soon, so they're not too sad about it still, but there's still a lot of like lingering things going on, especially towards the end of this episode.
It's basically like it gives the parent character an opportunity to have an arc over the course of the series as well, instead of just being the parent.
Yeah. And then it also deals with like some really cool stuff in regards to, it reminded me it's funny. It reminded me a lot of 8th Grade. If anybody's seen that film, Bo Burnham's 8th Grade. This is junior high. If you think that you look back and you're like, oh, I like junior high, you are lying to yourself.
You did not.
Junior high is I have said it before and I'll say it again. There is no worse age for a single human being than the ages of 12 to 14. Period. You are at your worst. You are the most incorrigible, most terrible version of yourself. It is all your worst traits coming to a head, bubbling up to the surface, and just staying there and stagnating for a couple of years. And then you all of a sudden turn 14, 15, and all of a sudden you're like a whole different person. And your parents can't believe it. It's wonderful. Not really, but like kind of. The last part not true. The first rest of that, like 90% of that, the first 90%, 100% true.
Yeah, I had a little flashback when she has her little bit in there talking about how middle school is so big, 3 schools basically fed into it. I immediately go back. I had to look it up just now, but I went to Mojave Middle School here in Scottsdale, which is spelled wrong because they spell it with an H instead of a J. But the I went
only in Scottsdale. Only in Scottsdale would that be named that way.
Yeah.
My gosh.
So they get it right with Saguaro, a little bit later, compared to the Saguaro down in like Tucson or something that has an H instead of a G.
But that's not because they're being disrespectful. That's because they're by Tucson. Like when you go into lower Arizona, southern Arizona, your intelligence just takes an immediate drop with the pressure.
Yes.
So yeah.
But yes, Saguaro and Mojave in particular, the feeder schools into Mojave were Pueblo, Navajo, and Kiva.
How did your white city? How did the whitest city in the valley get like the most Native American names?
Oh, I assure you, the schools and stuff were all super white.
Oh, 100%. I know that for sure.
Like,
why did you guys get those names? And I
don't know. They were probably some funding somewhere along the line. They were applying for diversity or something like that. But yeah, just that idea of like, the bubble that I had of my friends at Pueblo suddenly being blown up into 2 other schools, people I've never met before. Now I'm having to intermingle with classes with all of them, was like a different, like it was like a culture shock almost, because you have, all these like in-jokes and things from your school that you're now having to like push up against, and largely it especially here in Scottsdale, at least it was middle school was like a 2-year thing, instead of 3 years, so it was just 7th and 8th grade. But they like I almost appreciate it now in retrospect because they like forced the thing. Like we basically had like houses in middle school where it was like there was 7th grade was house 1, house 2, house 3, and whatever house was in like defined your rotation of teachers for your different classes. And then from 7th grade to 8th grade, you went into house 4, 5, or 6. And I want to say I was like in house 2 and house 6 in there. And it's...
The hell?
Yeah, it was a weird, basically like your blocks of teachers or whatever. And then like electives is where you could have classes with people outside of your house. But yeah, it was definitely a weird time, but like it just like hearing that in this episode dropped in, I was like, oh yeah, that like completely like takes me back to, you know, the wider world now of middle school that you're encountering. So I definitely had like, you know, sympathy pains for this girl. I didn't have to deal with like the, you know, prepubescent going into puberty bit of like cycle sisters taunting or something like that with a friend betraying me who's been like my best friend forever or something like that. But yeah, I still got the overwhelming nature of that kind of shift in worldview. Hit me like way more than I thought it was going to be hitting me on a Thursday night here. But yeah, let's. Did you have any like particular favorite moments or anything you wanted to give some shout outs to on the episode?
My absolute favorite moment, my number one favorite moment, which encapsulates. It is possibly a single moment in this show that encapsulates no matter your ethnicity, no matter your background, whatever. This is something that all middle schoolers do. They declare something really like not like that you shouldn't be declaring as a way of showing maturity. And it's when that girl goes, hey, what is it? What's her name again? I know Melissa's the girl who's asking, but who's the friend, the former friend?
I don't know that off the top of my head now.
Shoot. When she goes, hey, so-and-so, do you have a tampon?
Yeah, just very loudly.
Yeah, cycle sisters, like that whole dialogue exchange where they're very loudly trying to get everybody's attention about how mature and cool they are by talking about something extremely personal. Mm-hmm. That is like, clearly it hasn't happened to you because if you had, you wouldn't be talking about it like this.
Yeah, I love.
It's so middle school. It's so end of elementary school, middle school, like that whole like. I'm like an adult now because I'm on my period and I take a tampon and use it. Like,
yeah,
I lost my
I loved that little bit. I also I loved that followed up immediately. The girls like swooning over this kid behind them, Joey, who gets like the full-blown wind in the hair effect when he gets introduced, and he's just like the most normal-ass looking kid.
He's a twerpy little kid. Like,
yeah.
He's not like the teacher throws a football to some of the sports players or whatever.
Yeah, like that's
foam football.
It was a fun little subversion.
They're like taller children, and then in the back there's this small child.
Yeah. Like,
and then all the girls are like, the only person cuter than the boys in Sugar Rush, which is their pop band that they're big into, is this one boy. And the way they break it out is just c'est magnifique. Like, when I say it's the greatest hits of like all the good ABC Family Disney shows, this is what I mean. Like, it is the good stuff. Like, I'm coming into this experienced. I'm coming into this like not fresh. Like I know the playbook. I know what they're going to be sending my way. Like I'm prepared for it.
I realized
I love seeing it.
Melissa is the girl that loudly screamed, "Do you have a tampon?" And Jessica, formerly Jessie, is the former best friend. Because I had a note a little later saying like Melissa is just an insecure little turd when she's out there completely just bullying for no reason. like in the social studies presentation or whatever.
Melissa in particular, I think, is interesting because she immediately saw the main. I forgot the main girl's name.
Elena.
Elena, thank you. Sees Elena, who has like friends, who is clearly very smart, like coming from like she's a notorious like ahead of the pack when it comes to school and education from elementary school. Like she should be quote unquote the big deal or whatever education wise. And so backstory, not even during the show, she goes after her best friend, pulls her away into the popular girl group, and like does it and like is 100% like going after Elena, like that is her objective. And I have to say, it's been a long time since we've had a bully like this, and I have to say, I'm impressed.
There you go. I also want to give a shout out to like the opening little bit of Elena just trying to run into like Bobby's room and Bobby just like having the doors locked and them just being like completely glossing over like why 14-year-old boys have their doors locked so often.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It was just like, this is an awkward thing to be seeing on a Disney Plus show, like to even be hinted at in a Disney Plus show. But I appreciate
but not really.
it.
Like they've had that stuff in there for years. But no, my favorite is when he comes down, she goes, "Oh, put on some deodorant." He goes, "I just put on some deodorant." And it's like, you stinky, like 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Like you smelly. I remember being like, oh, that's not fair. I started like getting like pit hair and stuff when I was in 5th grade. So I got the like legit boy stink where like your parents are just like have to give up because there's just no way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was your experience.
It was not, no.
Yeah, no. As a oh, at the time I was like really sporty. I did a lot of sports back then too. So like that did not help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a hairy like 5th grader who does a lot of sports and likes to wear heavy clothing because it's fashionable for the like late 90s, early 2000s, does not mix well, especially when he's been sitting in a bus, an unair conditioned bus for an hour on his way home after football practice. I like my mother put up with a lot of things, and I look back and I look at that thing when she like the effort to try to get me to wear deodorant was a battle.
Yeah. I did appreciate the little heart-to-heart scene that that the girls have in the bathroom. Like I could obviously see where it was going when like I could see the whole like framework of, oh, clearly like she's not really on her period and she's just kind of like pretending to get in with the popular girl. But I wasn't expecting like them to have that like come to Jesus like, hey, we were best friends, what the heck happened like so soon? That's something I would have expected in a, episode 3 or episode 4 of a series like this or something like that. So I appreciated that like it's right there at the gate and it helps set up the payoff at the end of the episode of the girl trying to of her trying to like get the bully away from them and just be like, let's just leave him alone kind of thing. And the whole setup, the metaphor of middle school being like World War II and the Axis and Allied powers. I was like, that's an interesting take for a Disney Plus show, but okay, sure. Why not? I'm here for it. I also want to give some love to the mom character in particular, but also the just like pitch perfect dad jokes that Sam has. Be it his introductory joke of like, I have a book on anti-gravity, I couldn't put it down. And then what was it? He has one later when he meets Bobby. It makes sense that he's got like all the pennies going to buy that 99-cent burger. Just like love that. I love like he's like he is the super supportive, other guy kind of thing, or the new guy in the relationship kind of thing. So that was just like endearing. But then also the like really the maybe the best moment I thought in the show for me was the mom who clearly has this plan. She is like you see immediately where like Elena's kind of like neuroses come from in the mom character. And seeing her kind of like like weighing and like when is the right time to, you know, introduce the guy. The dad's been dead for 3 years. All the grieving book, all the, you know, all the books say, you know, they need time to grieve, all that stuff. And so she's got like this whole plan like in place that completely goes to crap when Bobby shows up just there with his bag of pennies. And I love her like just manic speed run of like, please don't like, here's what's going on. I'm not trying to replace your father. I love you very much. Please don't tell your sister because she'll freak out. and like just like that little moment of acting from her is just such a beautiful moment and probably my favorite in the show just because it's like so tonally jarring with everything else. But it also like establishes so much of who everybody is really in that situation because Bobby's just like chill, like he's cool with it, whatever. And then his pennies spill everywhere. And then I love that
I fully anticipate that coming to a head where he's buried it, and it's going to come out in a very awkward way, but it's going to be able to be a real healing bonding moment for the family.
Yeah.
Bit of a prediction.
Yeah. And then I love that even that gets like a little bit extra payoff there at the end of the episode with the daughter seeing it, you know, after they've like made the decision, like we're going to wait to tell her she's had a stressful day, blah, blah, blah. And then she sees them kissing goodbye or whatever and just wait, what? Yep. That was a nice little cut to black moment. So yeah, I wanted to give a little bit of love to that. And then I did want to like the last little note I took on the episode was the idea that the diary starts and it has that nice little like inscription from the dad means that she has been like, she has had this gift from her deceased dad for at least 3 years, given that's when he passed away, and is just now writing into it for the first time. It's like, that's a weird thing. Like that she just has had this and not had a diary for 3 years. I that jumped out at me as like a little odd.
I don't know. Losing a parent is odd. Things like that happen, like those idiosyncrasies where you're like, huh, how come that wasn't used before? Like I sometimes call them blind spots, like intentional blind spots where you're not ready to process something, so your mind subconsciously just like puts a blind spot on it, so you don't even think about it, and then you think about it like something happened with me and thinking about my mom, you know, a couple weeks ago, like something just kind of like came out of the blue. It was in regards to my car, which used to be hers, and just kind of like hit me. And I was like, how come I've owned this car and I've been using this car for years now, since even before she passed, and like I just now thought of this, and it was just a really, really, really weird thing that happened. And so like when I saw that, I didn't think like grief, and especially with children, I can't even imagine what it's like with kids, for kids to have to deal with that. I'd have to ask my father. He had to deal with it when he was growing up. But you know, it's a strange thing.
Yeah. Like
grief is a strange thing, and it does strain. Like there's these weird idiosyncrasies in your life when somebody gets taken away, and how life falls back together when they're gone is sometimes like these things happen. So I don't see it as being that strange.
Okay.
Especially if it was like a gift her dad gave her like just before he died. That's like things like that are massive blind spots.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, where like don't even like I didn't even think about some of the stuff until I was like some like really important stuff that I did not even think about until I was moving out of the house. Like I was taking like the last time I was going to be living there after I graduated college, and moving out to moving out of the house was like things I had not thought or processed for like since her death was like, that's a weird thing. This is also, I just realized now, like, yeah, no, I definitely vibe with this show a lot because it's like missing a parent, and like, you know, I don't have to deal with like a young parent remaining. You know, I have, you know, with my parental setup is a bit different than that, but like I didn't have to worry about like a widowed parent like getting back out there, and like dating. I didn't have to worry about that, but like yeah, like it's I definitely vibed with like and like when it comes to stuff like here's the thing, I watched the next episode already.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm working with a little bit more knowledge about like how she deals with it and like what happens and what like what they go through. The next episode I think is actually like extremely good.
Nice. I was very
Yeah.
tempted to sit down and watch it, but I was like, I don't have time to before we reconnect to sit down and record it. But like
Yeah.
I watched it and I was like, I'm impressed by how much I like want to keep watching it. And I don't know if I'll circle back to it with just everything else going on, but it's definitely the kind of thing that like if I had if I had a family, especially kids that age or something, like this would be a fun show to sit down and watch as a family or something like that. I thought I was impressed personally by just how like this. I probably just have it too ingrained in my head of like really bad Disney shows compared
Yeah.
to like this. I think is a step up from what I would envision as like a Disney Channel original show kind of thing. Like this seems to have a little bit more heart and thought put behind it as opposed to the blank life of blank and blank or whatever that I kind of like associate with Disney shows of not only like when I was growing up but like in that era of like when I was in my 20s and would see a Disney show offhand or something like that. Like I remember distinctly going to when I was buying my first car and like just sitting in the dealership like waiting for the paperwork to be signed and like they had the Disney Channel on and just watching that show and just being like, I am embarrassed for whoever got paid to write this because of how bad the dialogue and the show and everything was. And I have no idea what
What show
that
was
show.
that?
I have no idea what it was.
Okay, I'm like, did I miss where you said the name of the show? No.
No, I have no idea. It was just like it was very clearly like bright and colorful, and the Disney logo was there in the bottom right, and I was just like, this is a terrible, terrible show. Whatever it is, was just like, and so that is like what is ingrained in my head as like Disney Channel shows that I'm sure like. If I went back and watched like Lizzie McGuire now or something like that, I'm sure I would think, very differently on it compared to enjoying it at the time. But yeah, stuff like that jumped out at me. And so like this having, a little bit more heart, a little bit more thought behind it, stakes to it. I was like, this is like, I enjoy this more than I anticipated I would. I thought it was like, when I originally kind of pitched it, I was like, it's President's Day, ha ha ha! It'll tie in nicely to that, and I was impressed that I wanted to actually watch more of it afterwards. So I'm glad to hear that the next episode at least is really good.
It's really really good. I would actually say when it comes to Disney shows, I think there's a strong separation that happened, and I don't know where it happened. I think I would probably lean back to is I would not be surprised if the staff and like writing staff and stuff from this show were from another show that aired a few years ago called Andy Mack, which is about a girl in the same kind of age range who's dealing with things very differently. Asian American actress, and it was a seriously progressive show dealing with like some serious issues that like one of the like towards the end of the second season, one of the characters came out as gay. Like some really really great stuff happened in that show, and unfortunately it got canceled. That was a rough one. I know a lot of people. That's actually how it came up on my radar. Is a lot of people were distressed because like the show was a Disney show showing LGBT, and that was a big deal at the time. And that caught my eye. I watched a few episodes of the show, and it was really really good. And the same kind of there's a similar but at the same time extremely different vibe to the shows. And I would not be surprised if there is like some sort of technical like some sort of technical team kind of crossover with the two shows. If not, then I'm very surprised because it definitely treats like it's telling a story that matters to somebody. Where I think for a long time Disney shows started telling stories that didn't matter to anybody. You get your and they were chasing concepts and ideas, which is the complete opposite of where they found their success in the past with things like the great TGIF era of ABC television. They started chasing concepts and ideas because that was kind of like the trend for television shows for a long time. Like well, what's your concept? Or what's your idea? What's your your cornerstone of what makes you different from everybody else? And I think that shows like Andy Mack and shows like Diary of a Teenage President, or a Future President, is a like similar to that in that effect.
I did want to pull in because that reminded me. One of the things I saw is this was nominated or is nominated for the 32nd annual GLAAD Awards in the category of Outstanding Kids and Family Programming. So
there you go.
So congrats to them. And there was definitely a moment in the beginning. In the like the cold open of the show or whatever, where you have Gina Rodriguez and Aisha Tyler, and then the kind of I'll call her the Mrs. Lambert this show coming in as an Asian American woman, and just like looking at that and being like, that is a really cool depiction of the Oval Office, like 3 women of color. Just in these positions of power, because Aisha Tyler presumably is playing your chief of staff character there, and so I was like, this is really cool. Like it's another thing I love. Like as a white guy, both of us are incredibly spoiled on like representation in media and stuff like that, and 100%. so seeing something like that and realizing that little girls are going to grow up. Or are growing up now with that kind of like character and archetype, at least presented to them, is like really cool. So it was very, exciting. And so I love seeing that, it makes waves, kind of in those, in some of those circles, and it got recognized for it, or is getting recognized for it. Let's dive into the report card. On a scale of A+ to F, what would you give this one, Cam?
I'd say, just judging by the first episode, I give it a solid B+ area. I will put this out there. I think the next episode definitely bumps this up to like B+ A level.
Okay.
This show goes places that I think like Disney Channel, like other Disney Channel shows in the past, probably, gosh, I want to say 10 years, would be way too afraid to go to because it's too serious. But they go there with it, and it's quite good.
Cool. Yeah, it's a solid B for me from just this episode. I really enjoyed it, and it did entice me into wanting to sit down and watch more of it. So maybe I'll binge through the season this weekend or something like that. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this one. Stuff like Boy Meets World comes up, as well as Girl Meets World. TV series called Violetta. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which there was an element of me is like, is this part of the diary of a blank universe? The
cinematic universe of Diary of a Blank Kid?
Yeah. Soy Luna is on there. Stuck in the Middle. Lizzie McGuire, which I mentioned earlier, and High School Musical, the musical, the series is what rounds up the top 8 suggestions on this one. Extracurriculars. Anything else you watching on Disney Plus apart from like WandaVision?
No, it's mostly WandaVision right now. That's the only other thing that I'm watching. I will put this out there though, a special bonus extra credit, not from Professor Starkey this time, but from Professor Abbott.
Okay.
There's a very similar kind of show telling, like as far as storytelling mechanism being used, in an older show called Jack and Bobby.
Jack and Bobby
came out in 2004 to 2005. It was on the WB. It only ran for a single season, but it had a full season release. It has a young Logan Lerman, as well as John Slattery and Christine Lady, and it is a very interesting show that has the same thing where it's not a diary, so to speak, but so much as people are putting together a like pseudo documentary about this successful president and kind of the foundation of the lessons that he learned that led him to becoming the leader that he became. And it's called Jack and Bobby, and it's centered around these two brothers, and you don't find out to the end of the first season, well, the only season of television that it had, but at the end of the season, because it plays with who's the person who becomes president, Jack or Bobby. and it goes into that quite a bit.
So don't Wikipedia this, because that spoils it right away.
Exactly. Do not do that.
That spoils immediately who the future president in 2041 is.
It's on Prime. Okay, if you have Amazon Prime, there you go. That's an extra bonus. That's your Amazon. That's your Amazon not sponsored extra credit.
Yeah.
Good show. Logan Lerman. He's young in it, but he's really, really good. But do not Google it, and do not do not look at any information from Wikipedia on it, because you will be immediately spoiled.
Whoops. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cameron, for joining me to discuss this one. You can follow Cam at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love to, give a shout out to, Cam?
Sure, give me just 1 second. If you want to go first, go for it.
Yeah.
I'll come up after that.
Okay, you're pulling up yours. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. I will give a shout out to, go check out my Let's Plays this week on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. I sat down with the min-max contracts from Hitman 3. Had some fun with those, and then I did kind of a last minute switcheroo. I was like all set to play Double Dragon as the next game in That Retro Gaming series for the NES Classic stuff, but the Nintendo Direct came out, and Project Triangle Strategy, while stupid in name, looked really up my alley in gameplay, and so I sat down with the demo for that and had a great time with it. So you can see my first hour with that game over on the YouTube channel as well. So Cam, you have your plug up and ready to go?
I have 2 things I need to plug, because, as we mentioned at the top of the show, our dear friends and co-workers over in Austin are just a few people out of hundreds of thousands of people who are struggling right now. The events that have happened in Texas are bordering on catastrophic now, between burst pipes and things like that, making a really terrible situation even worse. Like, things just are not okay over there for a lot of people. People have poisoned themselves with carbon monoxide because the only thing they could think of staying warm was to pull their gas grill into their home to try to stay warm. First off, never do that. If there's methane gas involved in a closed space, it's a bad idea because it's poison. Don't do that. Don't start your car in a closed garage, etc. Because that's also what has happened to some people. So it's really, people are really, really struggling. And there have been a lot of people putting stuff out there. A couple of people I want to give a shout out to. One is Washburn135 on Twitter. He has a thread on, hey, it was, memes and stuff aside, this is a hard time for people, and he has a list of some really good links to it. If you go to at Washburn135 on Twitter, he has a thread of some really good charities if you want to help out people in Texas. Additionally, I would just want to give a shout out to a couple of them that was also being shared by a couple other sources. One of which is Salvation Army. Texas is doing good work out there. American Red Cross. Houston Food Bank, Austin Mutual Aid is doing they have a program going on right now to kind of funnel efforts into a single fund that they can utilize. Feed the People Dallas, as well as Para Mi Gente in San Antonio. A lot of people there are hurting.
The only one I haven't done any kind of follow up research into this, so I'm speaking on the Salvation Army as a whole. They typically have not the best track record, especially when it comes to LGBTQ stuff. So yes, maybe choose one of the other options from that list to support if you're going to support anybody that are going to be more inclusive in their support. I don't know if the specific Austin branch is a breakaway from that or anything like that, but yeah, that's the only caveat I would throw on your list.
The caveat that I think a lot of people point out too is the national level Salvation Army has that kind of stigma, but your local Salvation Army, they're out there committing. So Salvation Army especially is dedicated towards homeless, but granted, LGBTQ plus youth make up a massive part of the homeless population, so that does bring that into effect. Now that I think about it, I was just reading off a list, so I apologize if anybody got heated or upset about that. But really, the idea behind
I think I saw that same list. Is that the one Andy shared?
Yeah, Andy shared that list. There was a couple other lists that a couple other people were sharing around. And it's hard to remember that Salvation Army, which has like a legacy of being like a pristine charity that people think about, with the Santas and the bells and the coin collecting every year, is tied to some real anti-LGBTQ plus stuff. So my apologies, that slipped my mind. My focus is really just like putting it out there that there are ways to help people.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you're able to help people. This is not a place where infrastructure was ready for this. This is not a place where people have had this as a like constant experience. If you are living in the northern United States, you have infrastructure and stuff that's prepared for this. We're talking about millions of people with uninsulated homes.
Yeah.
Or partially insulated homes. This is a warm desert climate for like a large part of the topography, and they are not prepared for this, and it's shown, and there's a time and place for everything, but right now the time and place is to be helping these people who, through no fault of their own, are in this position.
Yeah.
So, our love out to, I know on our back end, we've been, talking to Logan, Jazz, and Frank, and then reached out, like, I believe you and I have both on different points to talk to Christian. Just reaching out to our friends over there in Austin and in the Texas area that, they're struggling. Like it's not good.
Yeah.
And our heart goes out to them. And of course, whatever you can do to help, we've done what we can to help. So
yeah, obviously here in Arizona, like we would probably equally be, ill prepared for something like this, with massive power outages and stuff. Like I'm incredibly grateful, even though it doesn't get too cold out here, like for the heat that I have. But if that was suddenly not available to me, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like I have no idea if my wardrobe would be warm enough for some really cold nights and stuff like that. So yeah, it's my heart goes out to everybody affected in Texas.
If you're out there and you're listening, stay safe, stay warm, stay healthy. Listen to public health advisories about, especially when it comes to water. Like stay on top of like where there's clean water for you to get. And love you guys.
Yeah. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. And yeah, I think that'll do it. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, I would normally say you can support us on Patreon, but as Cameron brought up, like there are other people that need the support way more than us. So rather than doing anything like that, please dedicate your support to any of those resources that can help the people in need right now. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.